small question, right?
And you can shrink that if you like.
Well, the first thing I would say is, hi everyone. Gregor and I know Gregor was here yesterday.
Yep.
When Gregor is somewhere, I am somewhere else covering his stuff. So sounds like he really enjoyed the feedback that he got from all of you yesterday, and it was so great to hear your reflections just now on the conference. Let me start with the world, since that'll be the shorter part than fixing Vancouver. There could not be a more important year for action. I know we say this every year, and that's maybe a lesson for us, but you know, when it really is this imperative. We've watched national governments fail again and again and again at the time of negotiations. And what they haven't sort of seemed to get is that the atmosphere actually hasn't been negotiating with us at all this whole time, right? So things keep happening, and we haven't been able to find that response. And our observation in Vancouver was that it really has become not a call to action, but a call to arms. The best case scenario is this 80 by 50 scenario for a deal. As long as that 20% is on the table, it will be a fight over who has access to that 20%. And it's just a completely deficit model at the time when we know what the answer is. We can't keep burning fossil fuels. That is the answer. So why not then fight for something where we can see possibility and hope and future, the kind of thing you were all just talking about, this concept of the race to 100% renewables. Very exciting for us as a city to see global debate and discussion around it. Of course, there's this little challenge that we have to do it. As the co-author of the motion, unlike the other councillor, it never once occurred to me that we couldn't do it. The question is really the timeline. And that timeline is greatly influenced by this, right? How fast can these connections happen? Somebody talked about the need to change the process, as Sadhu was quoting our Deputy City Manager, Sadhu. And it really is a race, because the atmosphere, again, could not care less how long it's going to take us to do this. It's going to keep doing what it's doing. But greatly inspired to hear people about the connections that you've made and the work that you're willing and already invested in and willing to amplify in your communities, because it will lift us all up to do that.
Thanks so much. Now, David, you've spent the last 9 years traveling a great deal to cities around the world as the representative of ICLEI. What are some of the thoughts you have coming forward from this event as you see the roadmap going forward for cities and renewable energy?
I think it's very positive. The sense is that the shift to 100% renewable is there. It's on the cusp of happening. So that is clear. The reality, however, is that most of what we're talking about is the OECD countries, the wealthy countries. As we move to a population of 10 billion globally, 9 billion of those people will be living in 1 billion in Latin America, 3 billion in Africa, 5 billion in Asia. So the question is, how do we take those partners along with us and inspire them to move to renewables? And we know that if there's going to be a deal in Paris, it's going to depend on financing for the Global South. If there is no financing for the Global South, then there's not going to be a deal. And that's the meeting that's going to occur in Addis Ababa in October. So that's going to be absolutely key. So I think it's great that we've got so many people now talking about moving to 100% renewables in the wealthy countries. Now the question is, how do we facilitate that and say to the developing countries, you don't have to follow our path. You don't have to go through fossil fuels and figure out how to get off of them. You need to figure out how to get directly onto renewables. And I think that's possible, but it's going to take our partnering with those cities, our helping those cities. And the problem is that only 3% of the cities in the world have a credit rating, have the ability to borrow money to do these kinds of investments. So it's how do we work and partner with cities of the Global South to make this transition? I think it's possible. I think we can inspire people that there is an alternative that we need to move on to. But it's going to take understanding that, as Andrea says, the atmosphere doesn't care where the CO2 pollution comes from. And so we've got to bring those partners with us and make sure that they move on this path to 100% renewables with us. And that's no easy thing. When you look at a city like Dar es Salaam, the city of Dar es Salaam doubles its population every 10 years. Well, I can't imagine living in a city that has to deal with those kinds of consequences. So we really need to become global citizens. We can do great things in our own city, we can do great things in our own country, we can do great things on our own continent, we can do great things in Europe and North America. But ultimately, we will represent 10% of the world population. And if we don't bring partners and figure out how to assist those partners in getting to a renewable energy path, because just like it's spreading like wildfire here, it will spread like wildfire there if they are introduced to it and see that they don't have to be dependent on fossil fuels. And so that is what I would beg all of the cities that are here, all of our organizations that are here, figure out who you can partner with in the global south. Figure out how you can help them to finance their transition, because we're not going to make it as a planet if we don't all take this path together.
And when you, after you've when you're thinking about moving the resolution and afterwards, no doubt you've encountered skepticism even in this community, which is probably more inspired by ecology and green thoughts than a lot of other cities. But how do you deal with the people who just shake their heads and say this is a pipe dream, 100% renewable energy?
Oh, well, two things I would say. I mean, one, and I say this as a mother of an 18-year-old, nobody on earth would have a child, although actually I said this to a group of people earlier, and then I realized maybe there are engineers in the room and they may actually do this. Most people, when choosing to have a child, do not map out 18 years of cost in financing and all the goals and the outcomes and objectives. It's a value system. It's a value. You want that to have a child. This is important to you, and you make reasonable efforts to figure these pieces out. Similarly, global planetary survival is a value for me. It's something that I value our species, and I'd like to see it continue into the future. So that's the first thing that you have to set. And then it's how do we create the connections that we need, how do we do the financing, how do we do the partnerships, and that is the role of elected officials, is to set that broader values framework. The other thing that we have going for us in Vancouver is the Greenest City Action Plan. So we made a commitment 6 years ago now to be the greenest city in the world by 2020. At the time, everyone said, that's crazy, why would you? Someone earlier said, oh, we have a very green group of residents here. Well, you wouldn't know it from my email inbox all the time. Ultimately, it is about the expression of our values, and 5, 6 years later, it's getting results. We just hit 49.7% of our residents are walking, biking, or taking active transport. That puts us within 0.4% of our 10-year goal in 5 years. So not only are we meeting the targets, we're actually very well on track to exceed them. And the message we send is set the value, let's share this goal together and figure out what your part is in. It's not a question of whether we are or aren't getting there, it's a question of what your role is going to be in us meeting this achievement.
That's great. Now, one comment I'll quickly make across to you, David, for the reaction. What I heard from a lot of the workshops that I attended, which I had not appreciated really until I participated in this conference, was how powerful the idea of community ownership and community autonomy is, and that sense of having a stake in your own energy future as a driver for investment in renewables. Because caring about the future of the planet and the atmosphere motivates, some people should motivate a lot more, but that local ownership piece often is the thing that turns the key. What have you found in terms of talking to mayors and city officials, especially in the developing world, because you put that accent on? What are the motivators for them? Is that sense of having more local ownership, does that also have resonance in the developing world or in some of the other regions that you visited?
You know, I think absolutely it does, and some places there are impediments to that by the existing energy structure. And so how do you try and change the existing centralized energy structure that says we will supply, you will plug in? How do you change that to change that picture? I think cities can be part of that change. They can create their own energy companies. They can create their own systems for district heating and cooling. They can create their own systems for creating electric energy. And I think that's the way to the future. I mentioned in a couple of workshops the Hermes Award, which awarded to a German company that created a switcher that will allow, they say, 50% of the energy consumption to be done between people who generate the energy themselves off their roof and sell to their neighbors. That is the future that's going to be the Amazon of energy of our future. And that is coming, and that's replicable not just in the West, but it's replicable also in the developing world. The idea that 50% of people in India are not even on the grid. The reality is they don't have to go on the grid. I mean, I met with Mr. Modi and I said to him, you know, he said, well, I've increased our energy production by five times. And I said, are you putting in phone lines? He said, well, no, we've got cell phones. Why would we do that? And I said, well, think about energy in the same way. Why would you have a centralized energy system when you can have a decentralized delivery? So I think giving communities the ability to generate and own and maintain their own energy is going to be a key way of the Global South plugging into this, for sure.
Great. Andy, I'll give the final word to you. Any additional thoughts on, you know, what are the role for Vancouver and for Vancouver both in our own space and then internationally going forward, just in the next 12 months? You know, where do you see the efforts going to be in place?
Hearing people talk about hope and realizing, you know, we spent a ton of time as a society in Vancouver, Canada, the world, talking about if climate change was happening, right? And apparently some people somewhere are still having that discussion. Then we sort of talk about what's the solution to climate change, and had a lot of arguments about that. We can advance this. But I was amazed at, you know, international gatherings are very good at finding disagreements. So there was, you know, for some people it's energy safety, for some it's energy security.
Were you quiet? Was there anyone? Our hope with this was to create a space for learning, for exchange, for dialogue. And I'm with 150 different groups, and we invited them in to partner. Claire is pointing out 200. So by the time I had moved into my new position, we got to another 50. So over 200. And what was I think our greatest achievement before we ever got here is that so many came in a partnership. I just want to say who some of these are. Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Clean Energy Canada, ICLEI, and that was a long negotiation. The World Future Council, one of the leaders in this space. The 100% Renewables Global Campaign. The Solutions Project. I'm not going to get this right. Umweltbund, help me out, Germans. Clean Technica, Climate Action, Bloomberg BNA. Also the C40 as a way of, although they don't partner normally in this way, the way they showed their support was holding a parallel meeting, and the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, and then of course PICS and the City of Vancouver and all of the sponsors that you saw. So I want to say a very, very big thank you. This is your gathering as well. Now, I think I counted 72, I might be wrong, different resource people and speakers. So I would like to acknowledge all of you, and I really want to acknowledge the people that had to do the Pecha Kucha in 6 minutes. Those were not easy to do. So I want to thank each of you for all of the work that you put into coming, to preparing, to presenting, and for the folks from the Land Art Generator, they drove 6 days to get here so that they could share with you their presentation. So that, and I think that they've got 6 more days to go to get back to Pittsburgh. So that is commitment. So a big thank you. We had a team of volunteers who were incredible. I don't know that many of you met them. They've been taking notes through all of this. They have been not hurting, gently sending us in different directions on where we needed to be. They've been helping with greeting, they've been helping with registration. And I would like us all to put our hands together for those volunteers. They have been incredible. Yes, yes. received, but really, it's not me. And I'm going to ask some people to stand up because they do deserve incredible recognition. Claire Havens. And so much work went into thinking through each little phase so that you would feel like there was a chance to engage. You would feel that there was a sense of belonging. So a big, big thank you. And to all of our colleagues at the Center for Dialogue who it was really funny last week. We were kind of a big team, and at one point everybody said, all hands on deck. And it didn't matter what else was going on, all of the team came forward. So a big thank you.